A round tore through the Humvee's front glass without warning. In seconds, Petty Officer First Class Juliana Price felt herself airborne as the truck rolled 3 times before crashing into a deep ditch. Her skull smashed against cold metal. Bright lights flashed across her sight. When everything finally stopped moving, she found herself utterly alone. Nobody else remained. Her SEAL teammates had vanished, scattered when the attack hit, their trucks speeding off through clouds of dirt and gunfire, fleeing the danger zone. That was the rule book. When you can't grab everyone, rescue whoever you can and return for the others later. But hostile fighters were already moving in, and returning might be impossible. Juliana dragged herself out of the destroyed vehicle, blood in her mouth, desert heat slamming into her body like a hammer. Her rifle still hung from its strap across her torso, somehow undamaged. She had 4 ammo magazines, 120 bullets, but no radio. The crash had destroyed it. No water either. Her hydration pack had split open, the vital liquid already disappearing into the dirt. Close by, she detected motors running. Many trucks, enemy soldiers closing in on where she stood. She was far from safe territory in dangerous land with no way to communicate, no backup, and no water in conditions that could kill through thirst within hours. The enemy planned to grab her, force information from her through pain, likely film her death for their propaganda. They believed she was cornered. They assumed she was done. They expected one wounded female SEAL stuck in the wasteland would be simple to catch. They had no clue that Juliana Price had completed 18 months of the harshest survival courses the American military offered. That she'd finished first in her SEAL training for desert missions. That commanders picked her for operations in hostile zones because she could accomplish things other fighters couldn't dream of. What unfolded during the next 3 days would turn into legend among special forces. How one SEAL beat impossible circumstances, flipped pursuers into targets, and made an entire enemy unit regret ever tracking her. But before we reveal how she pulled it off, leave a comment telling us your location, and click that subscribe button because this tale shows that Navy SEALs never give up, never surrender, and never stop battling. Now let's dive in. The operation had begun 3 days before at a forward base built into the harsh landscape of enemy ground. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen called her SEAL team together for a final meeting in the planning tent. 8 fighters who'd practiced together for months, getting ready for exactly this kind of job. Our target is a valuable enemy, Chen said, pointing to the picture on screen. Enemy leader responsible for organizing strikes against our people. Our sources place him at this building. Check your tablets for the exact spot. We move in quick. Grab him. Leave before his guards can react. Any questions? Petty Officer First Class Juliana Price examined the mission details on her screen, spotting potential trouble already. The building sat deep in hostile land, ringed by unfriendly towns with few escape routes and no reinforcements if problems arose. This was dangerous work, but that's what SEALs handled. Accept risks others refused. Finish jobs others couldn't. What are the rules? Asked Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, the team's veteran operator. Hold fire unless someone shoots at us, Chen answered. We need this man breathing for questioning, but if fighting starts, you're authorized to protect yourselves with proper force. After the meeting, Juliana ran through her routine before missions, carefully inspecting every piece of gear, every weapon, every magazine. Her rifle was set up exactly how she liked it. Better trigger, improved sights, silencer for indoor fighting. She'd shot thousands of rounds with this gun, understood how it performed perfectly. Hey Price, called Petty Officer Danny Morrison, one of the team's door specialists. You prepared for this? It's going to get rough out there. Always prepared, she said, eyes still on her equipment check. What Morrison and most teammates didn't realize, what stayed hidden in secret files they'd never read, was that Juliana Price's journey to the SEALs had been far from typical. She'd grown up in Arizona's dry country, learning wilderness skills from her grandfather, who'd taught survival tactics for military special forces. She could guide herself by constellations, locate water where it seemed absent, travel across ground without leaving mark. When she enlisted in the Navy, she aimed for the SEALs right away, knowing it would be the toughest challenge she'd ever face. The courses had almost destroyed her, 20-hour shifts crushing physical tests, trainers who seemed focused on making her quit. She'd pushed through Hell Week, through diving training, through combat instruction, winning her badge through pure grit and refusing to accept defeat. Now she stood here, ready to enter hostile ground with some of the finest fighters in existence, ready to show she earned her place on this team, not through quotas but through real ability to perform the mission as well as anybody. They packed into 3 Humvees at 2 in the morning, driving through blackness toward enemy land. Juliana sat in the middle truck with Webb and Morrison, weapons ready, night goggles making the world appear in shades of green. The wasteland stretched forever in every direction. Sand, stone, scattered plants that looked lifeless even in good time. Command tells us air backup is standing by, Webb told them through the vehicle's speaker system. Attack helicopters at the border, ready to launch if we call them, but they won't cross into hostile ground unless we're in deep trouble. Something about politics. Politics, Morrison grumbled. Always politics. We face the bullets, but officials in safe rooms decide what help we receive. They arrived at the target building at 4:30, an hour before sunrise. It stood exactly where intelligence claimed, a protected structure outside a hostile town, surrounded by barriers and watchtowers. Through heat sensors, Juliana spotted warm bodies of guards walking the edges. The assault worked flawlessly for 5 minutes. They broke through the wall, eliminated guards with quiet weapons, swept through the compound with practiced speed. Chen's squad located the target in an upper bedroom, barely awake when they bound his wrists and started moving him toward escape. Then everything collapsed. The siren blazed. Someone had discovered a fallen guard sooner than planned. Spotlights blazed across the compound. Automatic guns erupted from several spots. What should have been a silent grab became a running firefight as the SEAL team battled back to the truck. Go, reach the vehicles, Chen commanded, firing to cover her team while they dragged the prisoner toward the Humvees. They reached the trucks under intense shooting, but now the whole village was waking. Worse, they heard motors in the distance. Enemy backup responding to the warning. Chen made the decision every leader fears. They had to exit now or risk the whole team getting surrounded. The 3 Humvees roared from the compound, racing down tight streets while rounds sparked against their armor. They made it to the desert edge, speeding toward friendly ground, thinking they'd managed a successful, though messy, grab. That's when the trap sprung. Enemy forces had positioned a blocking force along their escape path. Armed trucks with mounted guns, rocket teams on high ground. A carefully planned ambush, meant to catch them in a killing zone. The front Humvee caught a rocket blast, spinning but staying mobile. The rear vehicle's gunner got hit, collapsing in his position. Juliana's truck swerved to dodge incoming fire, and that's when the buried bomb exploded. The explosion threw the entire Humvee skyward, flipping it through space like a plaything. Juliana experienced a second of weightless confusion before gravity took over, and the truck slammed into a gorge, tumbling 3 times before stopping on its side. Her skull struck something hard. The gun mount perhaps, or the reinforced door. Stars burst through her sight. Her ears screamed with a piercing sound that blocked everything else. She couldn't figure out which direction was up, couldn't recall where she was or what was occurring. Training kicked in. Even stunned and confused, practiced movements controlled her actions. Check for wounds. She could shift all her body parts. Nothing seemed fractured. Locate your gun. Her rifle still attached to its strap over her chest. Figure out your position. The truck was sideways. She needed to escape before flames started. She kicked through the already broken window and pulled herself from the wreck, coming out into confusion. The other 2 Humvees had disappeared. Either they'd escaped past the ambush, or they'd been wiped out. Smoke and dust hid everything past 50 feet, and she heard motors nearby and approaching. Her radio was ruined, crushed between her body and the truck's insides during the crash. Her water pack had burst, 3 liters of liquid already soaking into the sand under her boot. She had her rifle, 4 magazines, a blade, a small medical pouch, and no method to request assistance, and the enemy was coming. Juliana didn't lose control. Losing control was something she couldn't allow. Instead, she did what SEAL courses had drilled into her through countless training situations. Evaluate, adjust, move. Her circumstances were terrible, but not finished. She was hurt but could travel, armed but short on bullets, cut off but not powerless. She needed to run immediately. The enemy would swarm the crash location within minutes, expecting to locate dead or injured Americans. She needed to vanish before they showed up, leaving no clear path, buying herself space to think and plan. She moved from the wreckage, staying crouched, using the ground for hiding. The desert here was more than flat sand. There were trenches, rock shapes, scattered brush that could hide you if you understood how, and Juliana understood. Her childhood in Arizona's dry lands, combined with SEAL wilderness training, had shown her how to travel through this place like a shadow. She heard trucks reaching the crash location behind her, yelling in a tongue she didn't know, but recognized the sound of excitement, hostility, hunting. They'd located the Humvee and were looking for survivors. She kept moving, creating distance between herself and the enemy, her brain already sorting through the tactical puzzle she faced. No water, that was the biggest danger. In this temperature, already climbing past 100 even before midday, she'd be in serious danger within hours without fluid. Lack of water would cloud her thinking, slow her speed, eventually kill her more reliably than any enemy round. No communication. She couldn't request help, couldn't inform anyone she was breathing and needed rescue. Her squad would think she was dead or captured. Normal rules said they'd ask for satellite pictures to verify, might dispatch a recovery squad if they could confirm her condition, but that would need time. She might not have it. Limited bullet. 120 rounds might seem like plenty, but in long combat against bigger numbers, she could use that in minutes. Every bullet had to matter. Every fight had to be on her terms, at distances and moments she picked. But she had strengths too. She was a SEAL trained in escape and hide. She grasped desert survival. She could travel through this ground better than the enemy soldiers tracking her, and crucially, they had zero idea who they were chasing. They assumed they were following a desperate, isolated American. Simple prey. They didn't realize she was a hunter too. The top priority was water. Without it, nothing else counted. Juliana figured out her direction using the sun's location and her memory of the chart she'd reviewed before the mission. There should be a dried stream about 2 miles northeast, dry on top, but desert streams often held water if you knew where to search. She headed toward it using every bit of shelter the ground offered, pausing often to hear and watch. Behind her she heard trucks spreading out, the enemy setting up a search grid. They were loud, sloppy, too confident. That would help her. It took 3 hours to travel 2 miles, moving slowly and cautiously, saving energy in the crushing heat. By the time she found the stream bed, her mouth felt like cotton. Her head throbbed, her sight started fuzzing at the corners. Heat sickness was arriving faster than she'd figured. The crash had drained more from her than she'd known. The stream looked bone dry, but Juliana knew different. She located a spot where the sand appeared slightly darker, slightly firmer, showing moisture below. Using her knife and hands, she dug down about 3 feet until water started filling the pit. Murky, dirty, but water. She used her tactical scarf, the cloth every desert fighter carried, to screen out the worst dirt, then drank slowly, letting her body take in the moisture gradually rather than gulping. It tasted awful, but it was survival. She refilled her empty water pack, adding cleaning tablets from her medical kit, then buried the pit to hide signs of her visit. Water obtained. Next goal, dodge pursuit until dark, then rethink everything. She heard motors getting closer. The search groups were widening their grid. Approach. Juliana climbed out of the stream bed onto higher terrain where she could see without being spotted. Through the heat waves she counted 6 trucks spread in a loose search formation, creeping slowly over the desert, halting regularly to inspect likely hiding places. They were organized, skilled, not the messy militia she'd hoped for. These were trained troops who knew their work. That made things tougher but also more challenging. As the day continued, the heat turned into a physical enemy. By early afternoon the temperature had passed 115. Most people would have shut down. Juliana had prepared for this. Endless hours in desert survival training, learning to work in conditions that would kill unprepared people. She located shade when available, reduced movement during peak heat, stayed hydrated with the water she'd found, and she observed her chasers making errors. The enemy soldiers were struggling in the heat, taking easier paths in their search grid, overlooking clear hiding places because they focused on escaping the sun. Their discipline was falling apart as hours passed. By late afternoon, some trucks had quit active searching, and were stopped in whatever shade they could locate, their crews waiting for cooler evening air. That gave Juliana a chance. One truck had stopped about 800 yards from where she hid. Its crew sat in the vehicle's shadow drinking water, clearly worn out from hours of searching in brutal heat. They'd gotten sloppy, setting down their guns, thinking about their own suffering rather than staying alert. Juliana studied them through her gun scope, counting people, noting their weapons and gear. She could hit them, strike the position, take their truck and supplies, maybe even their radio. High danger, but it would give her resources and movement she desperately required. She spent an hour planning the approach, examining every bit of ground between her spot and theirs, mapping her path to reduce exposure, marking backup spots if things failed. This separated SEALs from regular troops. The capacity to slow down, think tactically, plan every detail before taking action. As the sun started dropping toward the skyline, Juliana moved. She covered 800 yards in 30 minutes, using every shelter available, moving when their focus shifted elsewhere, stopping when they glanced her way. By the time she reached position, 200 yards from their truck with clear shooting lanes, they still didn't know she was there. She settled behind a rock formation, steadied her rifle on the natural support, controlled her breath. 4 targets. She'd need to drop them before they could fight back, before they could call for backup, before they could shoot back effectively. It would need exact shooting under combat pressure. Exactly what she'd trained for thousands of times. Priority order: radio person first, then the soldier nearest the truck-mounted gun, then the remaining two. Quick, clean, final. Juliana's finger reached the trigger. She breathed out slowly, letting her natural pause between breaths settle her aim. Then she pressed. The rifle fired 4 times in quick succession. Controlled double taps, center body, exactly as trained. All 4 enemy soldiers fell before any could respond. The whole fight lasted under 3 seconds. She waited, gun aimed at the truck, scanning for movement, ready to shoot again if necessary. Nothing. All 4 down. She approached carefully, weapon raised, checking each body to verify they were finished. She felt nothing. No shame, no regret, just the professional distance that let operators do what needed doing. These soldiers had been hunting her, would have grabbed or killed her if they could. This was survival, simple as that. The truck held a goldmine of gear, water, food, ammunition, charts showing the enemy's search layout, and most precious, a radio. It used different channels than her team's equipment, but it was communication, and communication meant she could possibly request rescue. Juliana packed everything useful into the truck, then made a choice that would guide everything ahead. She could try driving toward friendly ground, maybe 50 miles across open desert, where she'd get spotted right away, or she could stay mobile in the region, attack the enemy forces, make them concentrate on tracking her instead of whatever missions they'd been running, and wait for a rescue chance. She picked the second option, because during SEAL training, in secret classes about working in hostile zones, she'd learned a basic truth. One highly skilled operator with smart tactics could pin down enemy forces far beyond their individual strength. She could be a phantom that kept them nervous, that wrecked their plans, that made them scared. She would turn into their worst fear. Over the following 2 days, Juliana ran a solo guerrilla war against the enemy forces hunting for her. She attacked their patrols when they were weakest, during the brutal afternoon heat when focus dropped. She ambushed their trucks when they were cut off from support. She wrecked their supplies when nobody watched. She used every edge the ground and her training gave her. SEALs learned to work in tiny teams because small teams could shift faster, hide easier, strike without warning. Alone, she had even more freedom. She could arrange ambush spots that would be unworkable for bigger units. She could hide in spaces that wouldn't conceal multiple. She could travel silently through ground that would expose a group, and she was clever about saving resources. Every ambush was designed to create maximum damage while using minimum ammunition. Long-distance shots at still targets, using the enemy's own confusion against them, vanishing before they could mount effective responses. She was teaching a master lesson in uneven warfare, and her enemies were paying the price in casualties. On the 3rd day, things shifted. She'd been listening to the enemy radio. Her Arabic was basic, but she could catch important words and ideas, and what she heard chilled her blood. They were calling in backup, not just more troops, but special forces from their own military, trained specifically to track American operators in hostile ground. The game was about to get much tougher. That evening, as the sun dropped in beautiful desert shades, Juliana heard a sound that made hope fill her chest. Helicopters. American helicopters. Distant but definitely ours. They were looking, which meant her team had listed her as missing, which meant someone was trying to locate her. She grabbed her signal mirror, a basic survival tool she'd carried in her kit, and started flashing it toward the far-off aircraft, hoping they had sensors that could see the reflection. Again and again, she flashed the mirror, sending code. Emergency. Emergency. The helicopters changed direction, flying toward where she stood. But so did enemy trucks. They'd spotted the helicopters too, had figured out what the Americans were hunting for, and were racing toward the same spot. It was turning into a race. Would rescue reach her before the enemy did? Juliana grabbed the radio from the enemy truck she'd taken, switched to the emergency channel she knew American forces watched, and transmitted openly. Any station, this is Falcon 2-7, American SEAL asking for immediate pickup. Heavy enemy nearby, location follow. She read off her GPS numbers, then said the message again, praying someone heard, praying they could reach her in time. The answer came instantly. Falcon 2-7, this is Reaper 5-1, we have your location, coming in for pickup. Arrival 4 minutes. Mark your spot with smoke. Warning, heavy enemy movement in your area. Understood, Reaper. I'll mark it, Juliana answered, already pulling a smoke device from her gear. But 4 minutes felt like forever when enemy forces were closing from several directions. She could see dust clouds from at least 6 trucks rushing toward where she stood, could hear the motors growing louder. They knew her location now, knew the Americans were coming, and they were set on reaching her first. Juliana took her position on a low hill that offered good shooting views in all directions. She activated the smoke device, bright orange smoke rising into the evening sky, marking her spot for the rescue birds. Then she crouched behind her rifle, checked her remaining ammunition, 2 magazines left, 60 rounds, and prepared to defend this spot until the helicopters landed or she ran out of bullets, whichever happened first. The first enemy truck appeared over a ridge 400 yards out, its gunner already shooting toward her. Juliana took him down with 3 shots, then switched to the driver, making the truck veer off path. The second truck tried flanking from the left. She hit it with short bursts, forcing it back to find cover, but more were arriving. She could see them now. At least 4 more trucks, all rushing toward her smoke. They knew they had her trapped, knew she couldn't have much ammunition remaining, knew that if they could just keep her fighting long enough, they'd crush her position before the Americans could pull her out. Juliana burned through her next-to-last magazine, keeping them away, making every shot count, forcing them to respect her position even though they had crushing numbers. Her rifle was heating up from constant firing. Empty shells covered the ground around where she crouched. Final mag is 30 rounds between her and capture or death. Then she heard the most wonderful sound imaginable, the deep pulse of helicopter blades, close and getting close. 2 Blackhawks appeared over the ridgeline, door guns already blazing, rockets streaming toward enemy positions, turning the battlefield into chaos. Falcon 2-7, Reaper 5-1 landing for pickup. Get ready to run. 1 Blackhawk touched down 50 yards from where she fought, its wind throwing up sand and trash, its crew chief waving frantically for her to sprint. Juliana snatched her rifle and ran for the bird. Enemy rounds kicking dirt around her boots, the door gunner laying down covering fire to protect her dash. She dove through the open door, hands caught her and yanked her inside, and the Blackhawk was already rising before she'd even found her balance. Through the open door she could see enemy trucks, still trying to close, but the helicopter's rockets and guns held them back. We got you, the crew chief yelled over the rotor sound, grinning like they'd just won a prize. 3 days, man, we figured you were gone. Juliana couldn't answer, the adrenaline crash was slamming into her, 3 days of stress and survival hitting her all at once. She just nodded, slumped against the shaking deck, and let the helicopter carry her towards safety. The flight to friendly ground took 30 minutes. During that time, the crew chief gave her water and checked her wounds, minor scrapes and bruises, some dehydration, nothing major. One of the SEALs from the other Blackhawk spoke over the radio. Falcon 2-7, this is Lieutenant Commander Chen, really good to hear your voice. We thought we'd lost you. Tough to kill, ma'am, Juliana answered, finding her voice again. SEALs don't quit. No, we don't, and you just showed it. Command will want a complete report on how you survived 3 days in hostile ground with no water and limited bullets. What you did out there will be studied, Price. You turned a disaster into a tactical textbook. Back at the forward base, the whole team was waiting when the Blackhawks touched down. They exploded in celebration when they saw Juliana step from the bird, beaten and dirty, but breathing. Chief Webb reached her first, pulling her into a crushing embrace that said more than words could. You crazy, incredible, amazing operator, he said, his voice thick with feeling. Do you know what you did out there? We've been watching enemy communications. You had them terrified. They named you the Phantom, said you were everywhere at once, said you killed 20 of their troops in 3 days. 17, Juliana corrected automatically. I kept track. The debriefing lasted 6 hours, with Juliana walking senior officers through every choice she'd made, every fight, every survival method. They recorded everything, wrote notes, asked detailed questions about her tactics and thinking. What she'd done surviving alone in hostile ground, running successful strikes against bigger numbers, and ultimately avoiding capture long enough for rescue, was going to become required study for SEAL survival training. The thing that amazes me most, said Captain Rodriguez, the SEAL team commander, is how you didn't just survive, you attacked. Most operators would have hidden, tried staying invisible until rescue. You reversed it, and made them afraid of you. That's not just survival ability, that's tactical genius. I was taught by the finest, sir, Juliana said simply, and I had reasons. Those guys left me behind, not intentionally, but still. I wanted to show I could handle myself, that I earned my spot on this team, not through any diversity rules, but because I can perform the mission as well as anybody. You showed that beyond question, Rodriguez. Actually, you've shown something larger. You've demonstrated what's achievable when training, skill and drive combine. Gender didn't count out there, rank didn't count. All that counted was your ability to think, adjust and fight, and you did all 3 better than anyone could have hoped. Over the next weeks, Juliana's tale spread through the Special Forces world, always in secret channels, never publicly, but operators shared stories. The female SEAL who'd beaten impossible odds, who'd battled through enemy ground, who'd shown that strength and skill had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with training and attitude. She received honors that couldn't be publicly revealed. Her methods were examined and added to training programs, and when the next group of SEAL candidates, including 3 women, went through survival courses, they learned about what Juliana Price had accomplished, using it as motivation for their own path. But the real effect was more personal within her team. There was no more doubt, no more questioning whether she belonged. She'd proven herself in the clearest way possible, alone, unsupported, against crushing odds. Every operator who'd ever worried that female SEALs might hurt team performance had their answer. Ability was ability regardless of who had it. 6 months after the desert incident, Juliana got promoted to Chief Petty Officer and assigned as an instructor at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. Her mission: teach the next wave of SEALs how to survive in hostile ground, how to turn weaknesses into strengths, how to never quit no matter how terrible things became. On her first day teaching, she stood before a class of SEAL candidates, exhausted, worn down by months of harsh training, wondering if they had what it took to finish. She looked at their faces and saw herself years before, fighting through the same doubts and tests. "Good morning," she started. "I'm Chief Price, and I'm going to teach you how to survive in hostile ground. Some of you might have heard things about me, some of those things are even accurate, but here's what I need you to grasp. I'm not special, I'm not superhuman. I'm just someone who refused to quit when things got tough, who adjusted when plans collapsed, and who remembered that SEALs find a way, always." She clicked to her first slide, showing satellite pictures of desert ground. "Let me tell you about the time I got abandoned in hostile territory with no water, no radio, and enemies everywhere. And let me show you how I turned that nightmare into a tactical win." As she taught, Juliana realized this was where she belonged, not just surviving impossible situations, but helping others build the skills and mindset to do the same, creating the next generation of fighters who would judge on ability rather than background, who would value results over assumptions. The wolf had survived the wasteland. Now she would teach others to be wolves too. Years later, when young female operators asked her guidance about handling doubt and discrimination, Juliana always gave the same response. "Don't try proving you're as good as anyone else. That gives power to people who don't count. Instead, prove to yourself that you can do the mission, master your abilities, complete your assignments, excel at your work. The doubters will either understand eventually or they won't. Either way, their thoughts don't define your skills, your actions do." Chief Petty Officer Juliana Price had been left in a desert, without water, tracked by enemy soldiers, facing crushing odds with few resources. And she'd survived, not through luck, but through skill, training, and the absolute refusal to surrender that defined every SEAL who'd ever earned the badge. They'd learned too late what they should have known from the start. Navy SEALs survive anything. Gender doesn't change, training and mindset do. And Juliana Price had both in full measure. The desert had tried to kill her. The enemy had tried to catch her. Circumstances had tried to break her. All of them had failed because SEALs don't quit. They adjust. They overcome. They find a way. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to hear more powerful stories of brave women in uniform.